Hi everyone, it's Dana. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be working over on my sewing table, so excuse the paint and the mess, and it's where we do all kinds of mixed media stuff, so it's a little messy. So what we're doing today is we're going to make the cover for the signature that we put together for the journal the other day. So the lighting's a little bit weird because my window's right here. So I hope y'all can see okay. So the cover I decided to do is fabric. We're going to quilt it. And I felt like this material would go really well with this because not only does it have the flowers, but it'll accent a lot of like the black that we have going on, especially in the ephemera. And so, and a lot of the stitching inside the journal on the ephemera will be black. So I'm going to show you, I've done a tutorial on this before on my channel, but I thought I'm making this today, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn on the camera and we'll get to it. So the base of our, I'm going to put this aside. The base for our, oh, where did it go? Oh, here it is. The base for our cover is a 9x13, just manila envelope. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this clasp off. We don't want to risk, we absolutely don't want to risk our, oops, I just dropped my whole signature. Give me just a second. Oh my goodness. Dropped the whole thing on the floor. Reaching for my Fabri-Tac. Okay. Sorry about that. I have so much stuff piled up. Okay, so I was reaching for my Fabri-Tac, which really needs to be refilled. So let's do that so we're not struggling with it. I got these Gail Agostinelli started using these like icing cake icing bottles for her Fabri-Tac, and let me tell you, she raved about them, and I 100% will rave about them. If you ever are a consistent user of Fabri-Tac, you find that when you use the bottle that it comes in, it like volcanoes at the top when you leave it open, and it'll come oozing out the top hole, and it is just really frustrating, and it wastes product too. That's the big thing. But with these little cake icing bottles, it does not volcano like that, and it's amazing. So I highly recommend, if you're looking for them, you can go to Gail. I got them on Amazon, and I went ahead and used Gail's link, gailagostinelli.com. She has a section on her website that's called My Favorite Things, and she has those linked there. And she does get a little bit of commission from Amazon if you use her link, but I love her and love to support her in any way that I can, so that does not bother me at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Fabri-Tac and I'm going to squirt some kind of all over the inside of the envelope. And I do this because I don't like the envelope to not be glued shut, because when you go to fold it and stuff, you get like air bubbles, air pockets in there. So it's just my personal preference. I like to glue mine shut. And then I'm going to take the flap here, and I'm just going to take my glue, and I'm just going to glue this flap down. And I'll be using Fabri-Tac exclusively during this process. Okay, now what I have is I've got just some 100% cotton batting. You could use fusible fleece, you could use non-fusible fleece, whatever it is. And I've got this cut just a little bit larger than the envelope so that I can trim it off to size. So what I'm going to do is take my Fabri-Tac, and I'm just, you know, not covering the whole thing. Because we're going to quilt this. So I'm just looking to put just a little bit of glue down. And I'm going to get it put down on the batting. I just want it to stay in place while I'm trimming it. So I'm just gluing that down. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to trim the batting to the size of the envelope. Now you could cut it 9 by 12. Obviously you can do that too. What I've found, I buy my envelopes at Dollar Tree, and I'm sure they're like this other places too, is they're not made perfectly, and so you can cut a 9 by 12 piece, and I have found in my experience that my piece of batting is either smaller or bigger than what the envelope is once it's shut. So I just choose to cut mine just a little bit bigger and then trim it off. Okay. Okay, so we've got our batting trimmed. Now what I'm going to do is take my fabric, here it is, which is also cut larger than my envelope. Okay, because I want, just like a piece of paper, if we were wrapping a cover, I want space to be able to wrap this. Okay, so I'm going to just put a little bit of Fabri-Tac, not a lot, because we're going to be sewing. So just a few little lines just to kind of hold things in place while we sew. Okay. Now I'm going to put the lid on my Fabri-Tac if I didn't lose my pen, because we're done with this for a little bit. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is lay this down, and I'm going to try and center it the best I can so that I have kind of even sides. Okay. Now you can see my batting is a little bit larger here. That's okay. This project is pretty forgiving. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to kind of smooth out. I've got some of my cotton batting all over the front here, so I'll just take a lint roller to it when we're done and get all of that up. Okay. Now I'm going to bring my sewing machine over. And I'm going to quilt, and I'm just going to sew right on top of all of these layers with the right side up. Make sure that I'm in frame here. Okay, so with the right side up, I'm going to show you on the wrong side here. I'm going to go in diagonals. I just like that look. And I'm going to use a straight stitch. So I'm going to turn my machine on, and then I'm going to lengthen my stitch to about 3.5. Now, when I start sewing, and this is important, I'm going to start sewing beyond the edge of the envelope. And then I'm going to sew in a diagonal all the way down, and I'm going to stop beyond the edge of the envelope. Okay, because when we fold these ends over, we want our quilted lines to go all the way across. So start and stop beyond the edges of the envelope, and you'll be able to feel them as you're stitching. So I'm just going to pick one side of the corner to go, like here's my corner right here. I'm just going beyond that, and that's where I'm going to start, and I'm just going to go, and I'm not going to back stitch because we're going to be gluing that side over. And I'm just going to go, and what I'm going to do is smooth my fabric out with both my hands, kind of pressing it off to the sides so it doesn't buckle and pucker. Okay, if you don't smooth it out and kind of push it off to the side, you're going to find that your fabric is going to pucker up, and you'll get kind of unsightly. And I'm just going to trim this off. Okay, so you see how that's nice and smooth. It's not puckered at all. I'm not sure if you can because it's black, Okay, now for the first line of stitching, which this was, pulling that aside isn't as important as all your subsequent lines. So what I'm going to do is, here's my stitch line right here. I know you can't see it, but it's right here. I'm going to come over about 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches. I don't want super close together lines, but I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'm going to start off the envelope, and I'm going to press down, and I'm pulling my fabric to both sides so that it's nice and taut. And I'm just following my stitch line, keeping my presser foot parallel to my previous stitch line. And I'm just going to go all the way down, making sure that I'm pulling my fabric taut. Okay. And now we'll do the next line, and I'll trim all my ends at the end. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and space it exactly the same distance or close to as the last line. And again, I'm pressing down and pulling my fabric to both sides so it doesn't pucker and it stays nice and flat. Okay. And now we'll do the next one. And again, I'm just eyeballing it, that it's about the same distance of space in between, and I'm pulling my fabric taut, pressing it taut. Okay. And I think we can get one more kind of close to the corner, so I want to do that. We'll kind of go like right here across the corner. Okay, so now I'm going to trim all my ends. And that's one side done. So now what I'm going to do, this side's all quilted because this is where I started. So this side's all quilted. So I'm going to rotate it around because this side needs to be done. Ooh, need to take a lint roller to that black. And so I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to eyeball the spacing between my seams, and I'm pulling my fabric taut, and I'm flattening it out so that it doesn't pucker. Put a string here. Okay. It's not hard, and it doesn't take a lot of time. The biggest thing is making sure you're flattening your fabric out. Okay, just keep going down until you run out of space. And the reason we're doing this before we glue these ends over is because if we glued the ends over first, we're almost guaranteeing ourselves to get puckering when we go to quilt it, because the fabric won't have room to stretch. Okay, and I don't think I can get another one in. Nope. So let's trim all the ends. All right, so if we had glued these edges down first, right, and sealed everything shut, we would have pulled the fabric taut, and then when we went to quilt the top of it, there's no room for the fabric to stretch, and so it would absolutely pucker, and you'd have all kinds of little puckers in your cover. Okay, so we're done with the sewing machine for now, and I'm going to move that out of the way. Hi, Gracie. Okay, and now just like if we were wrapping a paper cover, I'm going to miter the corners. Don't take it as close as you would if you were doing paper though. Leave yourself some room. Okay. And now starting with the long side, I'm going to take my Fabri-Tac. My pen is sticking to me. Okay. And I'm just like if we were wrapping paper, I'm just going to place glue. I always start with my long sides because the longer sides are, you know, the longer something is, the harder it is to work with. So I take care of those long sides first. And I'm going to just put Fabri-Tac all over. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift from the center and I'm going to press against the folder and roll the fabric up as taut as I can get it. We don't want that to be loosey-goosey. We want to pull it nice and taut. So rolling against the edge of the envelope is the best way to get that done. So let's turn it around and do the other side. I hope I'm in frame. I don't film over here at my sewing table very often. And then one down the middle. Okay. Now starting from the middle, I'm just going to press against the edge of the envelope and I'm just going to roll that fabric up. The Fabri-Tac definitely gives you time to do that. Now art glitter glue does hold fabric, but I would not use that here on this project. It dries too quickly. You want to have time to be able to work with your fabric. Okay. Now that the long sides are done, let's do the short sides. So what I'm going to do is, you see these little corners right here from where we fold it over? Let me look and make sure you can see. Okay, so these little corners where we fold it over, when I start to put my glue down, I'm starting right there and I'm getting glue up underneath those corners, just like that. Because we're going to need those to lay down nicely. And then in the middle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is not start in the middle, and I'll show you why. Because I want to pinch this corner in, and I got way too much glue there. Yuck. I'm going to pinch the corner in, hold it with my finger, and then I'm going to pull up this corner to where it lays nice and flat like that. Then I'm going to work my way kind of to the middle, pulling up and smoothing out. And yes, you're going to get nice gluey fingers. And once I come up to the middle, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do this corner. I'm going to pinch it in and then I'm going to fold up so that we get a nice mitered corner. And we don't have a messy looking corner. Then I'm going to work my way back to the middle, smoothing out any lumps and bumps. And there we go. And see how nice that looks? Okay, let's do this side. Starting with the glue up underneath this little pocket that's created here. And coming down and getting glue inside the other one. And then putting glue all over the flap here. Okay, so I'm going to pinch this corner in and then I'm going to fold it up to where it's nice and even. See that? And then I'm going to go up toward the middle and come back and smooth. And then I'm going to pinch this corner in and fold it up and work my way back toward the middle. Okay, so now when we turn it over, all our corners look really nice. Okay, so now one of the last steps is we want to cover the inside, and we did our stitching first too because we don't want all those lines showing on our inside front cover of our journal. So what I've done is I've chosen a paper that I felt coordinated well. And I've trimmed it down to probably 1/8 of an inch smaller than 9 by 12. So just take your 9x12 and shave it off by 1/8 of an inch on the long and short sides. And what I do want to do before I lay this down is I want to distress the edges. Not only do I like that look, but it also takes care of the white core of the paper. You've worked so hard on making this cover, and you don't, to me it just looks a little bit tacky to have that white core showing. It kind of takes away from the nice print. So I like to get rid of that. So I'm just going to ink here around the edges of my inside front cover page. So we'll take care of that really fast. Got some little frayed edges here from my paper cutter. Okay. Now I'm going to glue this down. So my tip for you about gluing this inside front cover down is do not be shy with the glue. You want to get as much glue on here as you can. Now, if you're not using Fabri-Tac, you can use like tacky glue or something like that. Again, this is a fairly large piece. I would not use art glitter glue. It just dries too fast. Okay, so, and I like the Fabri-Tac again because we are gluing it to fabric around the edges. Now you don't need to go right to the edge because we're going to be sewing around the edges. And I just, like I said, you can see that I'm not shy about the glue. I'm putting my little stripes here fairly close together. I don't want my paper to buckle because it has air pockets in it. So I minimize my little air pockets by just putting glue on as much of it as I can get glue on. All right, that's pretty good. Close up my Fabri-Tac, and now I'm just going to turn this over and line it up. And again, with the Fabri-Tac, it's nice. You've got time to move things around. And I'm just going to smooth this out. I've got little glue strings and clumps everywhere, all over my hands. Okay. So I didn't put glue right on the edges, so I'm going to go ahead and feel free to take this to my sewing machine. All right, let me pull my sewing machine back in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zigzag all around the edges, and I'm going to do this with my paper side up. And the reason I'm doing it with my paper side up is so that I can see that I'm catching the fabric and the paper. Okay, so I'm going to set my machine to a zigzag.